One stands for our neighbors' experiences. We all have stories to tell and speak within our own lived experiences and how we view the world. As many of you know, I spent 16 years. Oh, we got Glenn. Let me get him. Oh, sorry, guys. Um, Sorry about that interruption. I spent 16 years living in Mexico. Listening to Mexicans and understanding the culture around me led me to a moment of seeing that there is not just one way to live life. There are infinite ways to live life, and I feel more convinced than ever that each life has its own divine wisdom that can impact us greatly. My hope in our time together is to cultivate a spirit of openness and curiosity that will inevitably help us grow into a community that can be in solidarity with one another. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I felt like it was the perfect time to highlight Pathways Academy. Located in Central United Methodist Church, Pathways is a K through 12 school that works with kids with learning differences. Recently, a student from Pathways who is nonverbal has been making snack packs for the ID clinic that is hosted at Central. These snack packs have been greatly appreciated from the clients who come to our ID clinic. And for me, it has been impactful to watch the student with such a big heart to serve his community. I appreciate greatly the work Pathway is doing, and I'm excited to have Jim Herring with us. Jim was raised in Ohio and has been living in New Mexico since 2003. Although educated as a teacher, there were a couple of other career paths that helped round out his skills. In 2008, Jim joined the staff at Pathways Academy as a teacher and moved into the role of principal and executive director of the school in 2017. He works with all the stakeholders of the school to make it financially strong and an essential part of the New Mexico educational ecosystem for students with special needs. His heart is for helping struggling students to thrive in class and in life. And it is my pleasure and my joy to introduce to all of you Jim Herring.
Thank you very much, Abby. Yes, thank you very much. So, I have a battery of slides for us. I'm going to make sure that I am sharing properly. I get this shared, and there. It says participants can now see your application, so I'm assuming you actually can see it since the computer told me. All right, and I'm going to start a timer just so I keep track of myself and I don't run off into the ether. So I appreciate you all having me here for this evening. It's been a while since I spoke to the churches as a group, so I'm tickled to be able to be here this evening. A lot of you are stuck seeing me on Sunday morning, but this is a different thing entirely. Now I've got to get my... Okay, so I want to start off with some statistics. First of all, according to government source, 44% of children ages 3 through 17 in the U.S. are not on grade level in 2023. On top of that, 1 in 8 students in that same age group, 3 to 17, in the United States are identified with ADHD. That was in 2019. In 2016, that was 1 in 10. In 1997, that was 1 in 16. So from 1997 to 2019, we have twice the ratio. Just a couple more. 1 in 12 is the number of children ages 3 to 17 in the U.S. identified with a developmental disability in 2021. That is up from 1 in 14 just 2 years prior. And then the thing that really brings me here this evening, when it comes to autism spectrum disorder, ASD, 1 in 36 children in the United States are currently identified with ASD. And this was, I can't even see my own stuff because the faces are in front. That was in 2024. That's pretty current. Now in 2018, not too far back, it was 1 in 44. In 2009, it was 1 in 91. In 2000, not that long ago for most of us here on this meeting, it was 1 in 150. So over the course of a quarter of a century, we've gone from 1 in 150 being diagnosed with ASD to now 1 in 36. And the expectation is that that's liable to continue climbing. The principal of Pathways Academy before me, her name is Jan Secunda. Jan always used to say to me, if you know one person with autism, you only know one person with autism. Autism is not something that you can just say, oh, I know exactly what it looks like in every person. I did double check that saying, and apparently it wasn't Jan who came up with it first, but she's the one that I know who said it. A man named Dr. Stephen Shore was first accredited with that. Autism often occurs with other diagnoses and conditions that impact learning, behavior, and development. Understanding these can help people recognize and support diverse representations of autism. So, how many of you, I got to put this back up where I can see you all. How many of you would say that you are familiar with someone in your life who has been diagnosed on the autism spectrum? Most, I can't see everybody, but everybody I can see, and thank you, Glenn, most folks have. So now, 50 years ago, when I was in elementary school, I don't think many of us could name anybody that we knew. It wasn't prevalent, or we didn't know what it was then. Autism often gets misdiagnosed as a neurodevelopmental condition, as a cognitive or emotional processing problem, as a sensory or processing disorder, as a problem with sleep, eating, physical health, or mental health condition. That is, and it wouldn't necessarily be this, but there are also lots of co-occurrences of differences with gender and identity along with folks with autism. There are a lot of statistics to that I don't want to go into just this evening, but all those things can be co-occurrences with people who have autism. So often people get misdiagnosed at a young age as being ADHD, and the doctor completely misses the autism. Let me give us a functional definition. This is from the PED here in the state of New Mexico. A developmental autism is a developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction, generally evident before age 3, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Other characteristics often associated with autism are engagement in repetitive activities and stereotyped movements, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routines, and unusual responses to sensory experiences. Now, if you apply that definition to folks who are on the spectrum, you may see some of that. You may recognize students who flap when they get excited. Their hands flap. I've got a student who graduated, he's graduated last year, who was very stereotypical in that respect, but not in other ways. This is just the kind of thing that we all have to recognize. We learn to recognize what the spectrum can be, and when we begin to really see how many people may be affected. I ran across this very week, in fact, what was called a neurodiversity affirming definition of autism, which I think does a better job of explaining the person without being so focused on particular actions. Autism is a natural variation in brain development that affects how a child communicates, interacts, processes information, and experiences the world. Autistic children may use different ways to express themselves, engage in play, and respond to sensory input. Autism is not something to fix. It is a lifelong way of being. With supportive environments, clear communication, and flexibility in teaching, autistic children can thrive and fully participate in learning and play. I really liked this. As someone who works with students on the autism spectrum, I thought this was a much more human definition, let's just say. Instead of breaking it down into what can I identify that might lead me to believe someone is autistic, let's once you know they're autistic, then this is how we need to think about people, whoever they are, whether they're 3 years old, or 50 years old. It doesn't much matter. And I really liked what they had to say here. Autism is not something to fix. It's a lifelong way of being. It's who they're made to be. And our job, as what you might call neurotypical folks, is to better understand our brothers and sisters who are on the autism spectrum, so that we can communicate better with them and help them to communicate better with us. There are some brilliant people on the autism spectrum, and I think there are a lot of brilliant people who probably get overlooked because of characteristics that they display, which is completely unfortunate, because there is an awful lot to these folks, just like there's an awful lot to any neurotypical person. So I do work with Pathways Academy. I've been there since 2008. Pathways Academy was founded by Karen Mitchell Frank. There was an article in the Albuquerque Tribune. God bless the Tribune. May it rest in peace. But there was a great article on the school in 2003 that covered the school. It described how Karen was the mother of two sons, both who had needs that were not being met in other schools, and she fortunately had the financial wherewithal and the strength of character to start a nonprofit school. That school still exists today. It was originally called Mission School of New Mexico. In 2009, we changed the name to Pathways Academy because we had really lost any religious missional flavor to the school. It was strictly about serving students who had special needs and needed a place where they could thrive. This here is our graduating class last year. It's Jenna and Jamie and Saxon. The guy in the robe on the far right, he's the one I was talking about, who has very stereotypical behaviors for an autistic person. But he's got some of those savant kinds of gifts. When he dives into something, he'll spend time on the computer diving into it, and he'll tell you everything you ever wanted to know about the GDP of every country in the world. He could tell you what the weather is in another part of the world because because he'll study it. At one point he had memorized all the birthdays of everybody in the school, and everybody he knew outside of the school, for that matter. He finds an interest and he digs in. Jamie, the person next to him, also had a lot of that. And they're both on the autism spectrum. Jenna is one of our students who wasn't on the autism spectrum, but she has special needs. And so when she came to us, and she was with us for 6 years, we had a fantastic time being with her as well as everybody else. And I don't get a chance to dress up in my robes very often, so I busted my robe out for this last year's graduation. So at Pathways Academy, we are dedicated to making sure that classes are really, really small. We have 3 classrooms, one that's basically an elementary classroom, K through 5th grade, one that is basically 6th through 8th grade, and then the third one is 9th through 12th grade, roughly. And we maintain an 8-to-1 student to teacher ratio so that our students always get the attention they need. I've had people ask me in the past, what's the secret sauce for Pathways Academy? What makes you so special? And it's not because we're experts in anything. I think our secret sauce, if there is one, is that we simply are willing to give every student the attention that they need. And it doesn't mean that we are not experts on autism. We know a fair amount, but I wouldn't normally put myself out there as any kind of authority on autism. In fact, I spent some time making sure that I didn't sound silly when I talked to you today about it. I know the statistics, but I want to make sure I'm doing the kids justice. So typically, about half of our students at Pathways Academy are diagnosed on the autism spectrum. We have folks who are ADHD. We have folks with emotional and social issues, and sometimes there's a student who we occasionally get a student who has no, medical or educational diagnosis. They just failed to thrive, and we spend our time getting to know our students. We meet them where they are, no matter what level they start at, and then we help them move forward. So we're not as bound as a private nonprofit school. We're not as bound to some of the standards as the public schools are. I appreciate what the public schools do, and some days I don't know how they get done what they do get done. But Pathways Academy only exists because there is otherwise there would be an empty space in the environmental ecosystem in New Mexico. We exist for students who have the ability to do some academic work, some of them a lot of academic work, but socially or behaviorally, they're just not able to be in a classroom. And that's typically what gets them in trouble in another situation. Some of you may be familiar with the term ABA therapy. There's a lot of, I think, discussion within the autism community about whether ABA therapy is a positive or not. As the definition earlier said, autism is not something that needs to be fixed, but ABA is not, in my opinion. ABA therapy is about helping a student to learn to integrate with an environment, be that at home or in a classroom or wherever. And ABA therapists from Prism Autism Services are in our classrooms. As a parent may have contracted with Prism, they're a partner to us now, and they can get ABA therapy at the school. They can get occupational therapy through Prism Autism Services. This was a big missing piece until 2023. Just very recently, we began partnering with Prism, and that therapy is allowing a lot of our students to unlock potential that they hadn't been able to unlock prior to that. They hadn't had services like this and different kinds of therapies, and it's really bringing out the best in the students who are signed up for it. There are a lot of students who could sign up for it and their parents don't do it. That's okay with us. And it doesn't matter where a family sits on that pro or con ABA therapy side. We are happy if a parent wants to contract for services with Prism, they can do that. But we don't push it. We just make sure that they know it's available if they choose to do that. That for us is another big piece of what makes us different now, especially, is that the public schools don't. They choose not to allow ABA therapists in the classrooms. We think that ABA is helping our students to learn to be students. And so for us, it's a big boon to helping those students come along. I want to tell you really quickly about the student that Abby was talking about. This is Zach. Zach is in 10th grade as far as that goes. And he has been with us since, I think, kindergarten or first grade, 9 years, I think. That picture in the lower left there of him on the cargo net is probably one of the oldest pictures I have of him. He loves the ball pit at the trampoline park, and he does not have a lot of words. As Abby said, he's kind of nonverbal. Now, I would say he's low verbal because he'll talk my ear off. I'll tell you what. But he speaks in very very short sentences. It's more 1 or 2 words, but he knows. He can tell you who won the ball game last night. And you're saying, which ball game? And I'd say, which one do you want to know about? His family is very sports centered. He can tell you who's playing basketball tonight and who he expects to win. He's an amazing young man. And he has developed quite well in learning some skills for life that honestly, a few years ago, we weren't sure he was going to learn. But we do our best to meet the students where they are and help them move forward. And Zach has proved to be able to move forward in ways that I don't think his parents thought he was going to move forward in. And we weren't sure, but we were going to give it our best try. And he is going to be one of the pilot students for a program that we're starting in the fall that's focused on students who are coming in primarily for life skills kinds of stuff and not academic. Zach's never going to graduate from high school, not with a diploma, but he will get a certificate of completion because he's going to go through our program. And he'll get all the way through high school and have that certificate of completion at the end of that process. And he will have earned it, I promise you. Zach is just one of currently 21 students at the school. Our capacity right now is for 24 students. We're always looking for, it's open enrollment. We're always looking for more students. And our commonality is that we're looking for students who are currently struggling and need a place to thrive. And I want to say one more time, I want to get to this too. It was something I picked up on earlier this week from another presentation I saw. Autism is not necessarily something that is caught early, or parents pass it off as something else. When we miss when we miss diagnosing autism early, we miss out on opportunities for crucial interventions that are effective to helping young children to learn to be in the environment they're in. We don't want to change anybody, but we do want them to be able to interface with the world around them and for the world around them to understand them better. People on the autism spectrum have double the rates of suicide and suicidal ideation than non-autistic people. And this can be seen, according to the research, can be seen as early as preschool. Misdiagnosis, you get diagnosed as ADHD and somebody completely misses on the autism. You wind up with a treatment plan for ADHD that completely ignores other issues that should be on the treatment plan. So it's important to be able to help people to recognize autism when it's there. And students can simply be categorized as difficult. And when I was in school, I knew kids who I would use the word quirky. These were kids who couldn't focus well. It wasn't just ADD or ADHD. They're kids who they were quirky. My parents thought I was the quirky one for a long time. If I'm on the spectrum, I'm way over on one end of it. But I know some people who think that everybody's on the spectrum someplace, even if you're just way out on the end. But it's not fair to categorize kids as being difficult when all it is nobody understands what they need. And that's one of the things that we do at Pathways Academy is we work hard to understand what our students need and to give it to them as best as we can. We're here for the students, we're here for their families, and that's what brings us to this last slide. If you've ever wondered what a thriving student looks like, we got a bunch of them. I'll give you come in. We'll give you a tour, and I'll show you some kids who used to struggle and they don't anymore. And thank you. That's what I've got. That's me, and that ran a little long, but at least I knew where I was going.
You did great. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask Jim?
I answered them all.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
not.
Hey, Jim. Andy Stoker.
Hi, Andy.
I have a question about language and how we can best be inclusive. Thank you. How we can best be inclusive with our when we meet a neighbor who is that quirky one.
Yeah.
That you said. I'm always interested in welcoming language, how especially, and you and I have had this conversation, just reading the red words in those four first books of the Christian scripture.
Yeah.
Jesus always had the right words to say. And following his lead, I am very interested in your thoughts on neurodiversity, people first language. How would you help us to navigate our neighbors' experiences with how we address our beloved?
So that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. I think for me, the thing that I am most attuned to is the idea that if often, especially folks who are on the spectrum who might be considered lower on the spectrum, they are less verbal or much more quirky. That can make people uncomfortable, or just confuse them as to what to do. I would start off by saying, treat them like you would treat anybody else. To when if Abby, you're in the center of my screen and Andy's on the side. So if Abby's in front of me and I should be talking to Abby, but I spend all my time looking at you, Andy, I'm not giving Abby the respect that she needs. If I should be talking to Abby, I should be talking to Abby, right? And that, I think that would be one of my primary things. We probably need to be careful about. You need to get to know a person, and this is the case for anybody, right? A lot of this is really basic human stuff, but it has to be done deliberately with folks on the spectrum, I think, because it would be easy to look at the person next to them and treat them like they can't hear you or couldn't possibly respond. Zach can respond, and I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts that Zach knows when he's being ignored because someone's talking around him. And I know the conversations I have with him are deeply meaningful, if not incredibly repetitive sometimes, deeply meaningful, because you get to know that person at the heart. So that would be my primary advice, Andy, for anybody who's thinking about that.
Are there any other? Oh, sorry.
I would also say,
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, go for it, Roger.
Yeah, Jim, I'm just curious, are your students excited and happy to go to school, or they feel like they're being totally forced?
Okay, so I owe you that $5 I told you I'd give you then. Thanks for asking that question. So yes, I appreciate you asking it, because that comes up. We have a 2-month probationary or a trial period for families. When you put somebody on an annual contract, you don't want them to have to sign it before they know it's doing their family any good. So the first 2 months is a trial. At the end of that 2 months, the family gets to tell us whether they think it's still a fit for them. And then we also, as a staff, get together and make sure that we feel like we're doing that student justice. And I tell you that to say that when I get together, when the classroom teacher and I get together with the parents, one of the most common things I hear, Roger, and this over and over and over again, I don't have to drag my kids to school anymore. They get up and want to come to school. I can't tell you how happy that makes me, knowing that that's the case. Now, that's not to say it's 100%, and it's certainly not every day for every student either. They're no different than you and I. We have days when we're charged up about things and days when we'd like to stay in bed. But for kids who often gave their parents the dickens in trying to get to school, most of them are happy to come to school. They have friends at this school. They are understood by their friends and the teachers at this school. Like I said earlier, they're treated like full individuals at this school. They're not treated like difficult people. And I think that, who doesn't appreciate that? So that would be my answer to that question. Yes, most of them are very, very positive about coming. And if they're not, then that's part of my question to the parents. Is this really a good fit for your student if you're dragging them in? And it's not the best thing for my pocketbook, but it's a much better thing for the student, the family, and for our reputation as a school if we're not taking students that are having to be dragged in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Jim, Sandy Roberts,
Yes.
what are your teachers trained? What areas are they trained in?
That's a great question too, and the answer is might surprise you. Typically, nothing. We have bachelor. They all of our teachers have bachelor's degrees. My bachelor's degree is in education, but I had no experience with special ed before I started at Pathways Academy. Glenn, I saw that you had a comment up there. I'm hoping it's in the chat. Yes, so I'll grab that here in a minute. I promise. I've got my elementary school teacher, no joke, has a criminology degree. My middle school teacher has a psychology degree. My high school teacher has a theology degree. So what I discovered in being a teacher at the school, and then becoming a vice principal, and then having to do the hiring for things, is that I met a lot of people who had degrees for special ed who I would never let near my students. They clearly weren't. They didn't have the flexibility of personality. They didn't seem to have the empathy. Now, that's not to say that that has to be the case. I mean, I've got a career teacher who retired from Oregon. She and her husband moved here. If she didn't want to retire soon, I'd try to get her into one of my classrooms if I had a space. But she's told me that's not going to happen because she wants to be able to retire soon. But she's got the experience in special ed that none of us have, except my past principal, who's still volunteering with the school. But what I hire for is the personality. People who will listen, people who will look past what might be an unhelpful facade on a student, people who can be flexible with their approach. If you think you have the answers, you're probably not my teacher. It's the one who recognizes that there could easily be other solutions for a difficulty, and was willing to look at all the possibilities instead of saying, nope, I was taught this is how we do it. That's not my person. I've had those people. They didn't work out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Dodie, Dodie, just a second. Let me get to Glenn's question. Glenn said in the chat, Jim, as a 1999 ADHD person, do you think more diagnoses are because the more people have it, or are we doing a better job at discovering it? That's a great question. Man, such great questions tonight. Glenn, I think it's a little of both. And that would go for ADHD. It would go for the developmental disabilities. It would go for autism spectrum disorder. I think a lot of it just got passed off as bad behavior for a long, long time, and now we're realizing that these things are not necessarily a choice. I mean, we can all learn. We can all learn to cope better, but there are some differences built into people in their genetics that make them a little different. Whether you want to say neurodiverse or quirky or whatever the word is, I think we all need to recognize that there isn't much. I don't take much stock in the word normal anymore. I'm not, because if you go by the idea that so many people are being diagnosed with things, I think normal is abnormal. What we would consider to be abnormal is now the normal. Those of us who would consider ourselves normal might be in the minority. I think that's just recognizing reality more than anything. So that was my answer for Glenn, and he had to pop off. So, Dodie, what did you have for me?
Yes, my question is, how do you finance this very individual type of education with so few students?
Well, that's man, this is good stuff. So that's a great question. Sometimes I tell people it's a God thing. But I have to be careful who I say that around. In this crowd, I can get away with that. We operate on a budget of less than $450,000 for the entire school. We have occasionally, for a number of years, we struggled financially. Thankfully, since 2017, we made a turn on the finances, and we're getting better at accruing donations and grants. At one point, we were heavily dependent on just a very few sources for large amounts of funding. One private donor and the United Way. We got overly dependent on that, and it burned us. We nearly closed in 2017. That was the point at which I took over. And part of my job was to make sure that the books were much easier for us to understand. There was a lot behind that. We're tuition driven. About 60% of our funds come from tuition. The rest has to be fundraised. Fundraising, grants, donations, the like. A lot of it has happened through people we already knew. We are in the process of trying to find different granting sources, bigger granting sources, so that we can increase our budget rather than just scraping by every year like most nonprofits have to do anyway. Because we believe that the need for what we have is far greater than our capacity. So we have 24 seats this year. We're planning on 27 seats for this next year, including the three students we'll bring in for our new pilot program. You could easily multiply that by a factor of 10 and still not come close to covering the need for a school like this. We see kids every day or every week. We talk to parents at least who can't afford tuition. We provide financial aid for families who can qualify based on economic need, up to 50% of tuition, but not typically more than that. It's been a long time since we've got outside of that, because if we're offering someone a full scholarship, that's one person instead of two or more. With the same funds. So we try to make sure that we're getting as many students in as possible. So if we give full scholarships, that makes it much harder for us to have more students without more money. But we're working on that. If you get a chance to meet Deb Dorn, who is our development person right now. Deb's also the person that I rely on for a lot of help with, the whole staff relies on for help with special ed type subject matter. She's making inroads. She was at the CDD conference today that was going on up at one of the casinos. She's rubbing elbows and trying to get more people to know us. We are sadly a well-kept secret in our community. I answer phone calls. I don't answer most of them, and I answer phone calls, and they say, "I didn't find out about you until I searched Google for autism special ed education." They'd never heard of us before they find us on Google. We have a limited budget, so it's not like we can buy billboards. But my hope is that we develop friends like you all here. And when you know about us and you find out about somebody who might be in need, you have the opportunity then to say, sounds like you need a place for your student other than the place they're at now. Have you ever considered Pathways Academy? have them come and they can just call us and take a tour. That's step one. Take a tour. Most people are pretty impressed with us when they take the tour. They also tend to get a little pale in the face when we tell them that there's tuition if they hadn't figured it out already. We only charge what it takes to. Actually, we don't even charge what it takes to cover a student. One of the things we learned this year was that even our full pay students are still effectively getting $4,000 in financial aid, because the actual cost of educating a student was $4,000 more this year than our full tuition price. And that's, bad on me for being the principal for 6 years and not knowing that. But here in my 7th year, I'm getting a few things figured out. That's one of those things that we're educating our own families on, is that nobody here is really paying full tuition. Full tuition would be $20,758 this year to cover our budget. Next year, I'm hoping it'll cost a little bit more per person because we have to give people raises and all that good stuff. It's hard to keep staff at the rates I pay. But fortunately, I've got folks who are as committed to this as I am on my staff. So it's a patchwork, Dodie. We finance it mainly through tuition, but we wouldn't stay open for 6 weeks without the fundraising.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have time
Yes.
for one more question.
Sure.
Yeah, Donna, go ahead.
Hey, I have 2 questions. The first one is, I'm curious, like you have time and energy to do this, but I didn't know if you have some sort of parent education or parent coaching or something about the home environment. And then I'm
Yeah.
also curious if you require vaccinations for your students.
Fair questions. So on the parenting part, we try to work with our parents, but we don't have anything formal like a parenting class. We do try to point parents that we can tell are struggling. We try to point them towards resources, and we have a resource list that we send out to families who ask. As far as the vaccinations go, parents have the right in the state of New Mexico to opt out. We allow that. It does. Fortunately, we do not have a lot of families who do that because I think it's just safer all the way around because we've got some medically fragile kids. It's better for us that the vast majority of our students are vaccinated, but we don't. I'm not going to hold that against a family if that's their choice. I can only think of one or two families who are making that choice right now.
Well, I just thought you might have some students with a vaccine injury, and so that's why I was curious.
Not. I've never heard of one with a vaccine injury. No, but I do know that there are some skittish families. Understandable.
Jim, there was 2 things that you said that I really want to carry with me tonight. The first thing is that you said was autism is not to fix. Autism is a way of being.
Yep.
I definitely want to take that phrase with me. And the other thing that you said is you said that at Pathways, you guys really strive to give attention to every student, what they are needing. And I wanted to comment on that and say from my experience with the Pathways staff, I can say that they give so much autonomy, care, and creativity to their students. Your staff is so passionate about the work they do, and it has been extremely impactful for me to get to know Deb and yourself, Jim. And if I can just talk about Zach one more time,
Go for it.
It has been just such a pleasure to get to know him and sincerely impacted by his genuine spirit and his generosity to give to the ID clinic. He stopped by my office yesterday, and I feel like we're getting to know each other, and it's been just so special, but so deeply impactful to see such genuine kindness and generosity from him. And I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you do to allow all the Zachs of the world to shine in their own divine wisdom to the world. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and you're very welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's been a pleasure. And if you think of any other questions, most of you know where to find me on Sunday mornings.